if the Twins were open to a hockey-like Vegas expansion draft.
Yeah, not
the
terrible.
caliber of player would be pretty low, like guys who are replaceable. Let's take another call here. Paul, you're on the show.
Phil, I don't even know where to begin with you right now.
Hi, Paul. How are you?
I'm doing well. And yourself?
Still upset about the cheap shot last night, but I guess I'll get past it.
Yeah, well.
It's just embarrassing for our sport.
It is. It is. Phil, your starting point is way off, that these are crappy players. These aren't crappy players.
Not crappy. I never said crappy.
You said Tyus Jones.
They're second and third tier players.
Are they, though? Fleury's won Stanley Cups.
You guys, all of you hockey
Paul,
fans.
I tried to tell him, okay?
All of you hockey
You're
fans
be
ripped on Fleury. You guys ripped on Fleury for years.
He had bad playoffs, but then he came back last year and played what? Paul, I tried to explain it.
All right,
It fell on deaf ears.
Let me get this straight. So Fleury is an excellent goalie, so he's like all the other goalies that stop 92% of shots in the NHL. That's shocking.
Go home and have this fight.
All of the goalies in hockey stop 92% of shots. That's so crazy.
Relax, folks. Relax here. I'm on a time schedule here.
Okay. Good, because we're not.
Are you going to tell me Neil from Nashville is a scrap heap player? Hardly. Are you going to? Holla was misused.
Oh, misused.
Totally.
He's right,
misused.
Paul. You're right.
Okay, we can just point to overtimes under Yo and Boudreaux as to how Holla was totally misused. So you take a bunch of players, and number one. It also shows the depth of talent in this league. My buddy Judd here has said that we've had a mediocre crop of players for so many years. This kind of shows that that's not the case. Number one, your adage that you take scrap heap players and they can almost win the cup, and that's wrong. Well, how about the 91 Twins? Worst to first. The Braves, worst to first.
But the 91 Twins had multiple Hall of Famers.
Eventually.
Well, no, in the moment they were Hall of Famers, like they just hadn't been inducted yet.
They still played crappy the year before. They were in worst place. So your idea that you can't go worst to first or scrappy to a team that's gelling, Lou Nanny said it earlier, coaching matters. This coach is using Holla the way he should have been used. This coach is using other players the way they probably should have been used on their other teams. So your premise that these are scrap heap players right off the bat is wrong.
But you're Paul, you're proving my point. And my point is hockey has turned into such a bottlenecked flurry of activity that players like Judd, just be quiet for 30 seconds, okay? Players like Sidney Crosby and Alex Ovechkin are marginalized and can actually be placed in the same paragraph as players like Eric Haula. That's what's happened to hockey over the last 20 years. Absolutely.
You're comparing the individual talent to the team. I mean, look at the 80 Olympic team. Well, look what Herb Brooks did with those players. Are you going to tell me those players are better than the Russian individually in 1980? No way.
Paul, you can stop.
They worked as a team.
You can stop with the expansion draft was very good. The expansion draft was good. It's not Tyus Jones type players. It's players above that.
Yeah, he's starting with the wrong premise.
I know, but it doesn't fit the narrative, so he disagrees with me.
The San Jose Sharks of 19 whatever that was.
You guys are pulling like isolated examples from
we're not.
30 years ago.
When you
35 years ago.
You're pulling Sidney Crosby out of a hat. What does Sidney Crosby have to do with this?
Okay, I think there's I almost feel like there's two different conversations taking place right now. You've got a conversation about whether Eric Haula was misused or not with the Wild. Yeah. And I'm telling you, the fact that a guy can go from scoring 6 goals in 81 games and then just be given he's just going to get extra opportunities, and now he scores 43? Like,
how much time was he playing in those 81 games with the Wild? They had him on a fourth line checking line, which was a total misuse of Halla's talent. He's a speedster. That'd be like putting Zucker on a checking line. That'd be ridiculous, and that's what they did to him.
So based on your premises, let's translate this to another sport. If you just give a marginal player like Eduardo Escobar more opportunities, he's going to be closer to Mike Trout. Like the sport flattens out skill. The sport flattens out skill.
Haula is hardly Sidney Crosby.
That is a narrative you've decided.
Yes.
It's that simple. You've decided that, and you're not going to back off it, but it's not correct. Eric Haula is a very good player who, unfortunately, the Wild, Paul's right, didn't use absolutely correctly because, as I've been telling you guys for 3 years now, Mikko Koivu has been used too much. Ideally, Haula should have transitioned into a 2-role long ago and Koivu back to a 3-role, but they didn't. Is there some ineptitude in coaching? Absolutely. Is there ineptitude with GMs? Absolutely. But it does not necessarily flatten out skill. That's not true.
Whoever coached Eric Haula and William Karlsson in previous incarnations should never get a job in hockey ever again if what you guys are saying is correct. And if it's that, and hold on, Paul, and if it's that easy to spot, if it was that easy to spot Las Vegas, if like, oh, well, you know what, you just don't see it, Phil, you're not a hockey guy, then where was everyone before the season all over the Vegas bandwagon? And the answer is nowhere. Because you had no idea it was coming because hockey is unpredictable and variant in the short term. It is.
Not true. I heard Judd say they're going to be better than your normal expansion team.
Okay.
Well, Louis said that.
We have to remember something. Hockey is the only sport where systems are bigger than the player. And you take players off of the Wild or Nashville or whatever, and maybe they were just kind of floundering there. You put them in a system that works for them, of course they're going to flourish, and that's what happened with Haula. He has more minutes. He's on a better line with better skaters and better shooters. Of course he's going to get more goals than throwing him on a checking line on the fourth line with the Wild, who emphasize defense more than they do offense.
Yeah, again, like we're talking past each other here, okay? I'm not saying Eric Haula is as good as Sidney Crosby. You guys are listen to my argument. Nobody is saying Eric Haula is on the same level as Sidney Crosby skill-wise. The fact that hockey allows those guys, or let's take William Karlsson, who's a better example because he had more production this year. The fact that William Karlsson can be on the same level as a Sidney Crosby or an Alex Ovechkin is absurd. Absurd. It's like saying Gorgie Jang can be on the same level as Anthony Davis. It should not be possible.
What if this is a career year for him, which happens in every sport, including your favorite sport, baseball? The narrative doesn't fit what you want it to, so you're disagreeing based on the statistical analysis you're doing, which is flawed. Watch the sport.
Not only that, Sidney Crosby's value isn't in his points alone. He is a huge two-way player. I don't know if this Karlsson guy could match Crosby's defensive play. If Crosby only specialized in offense, he'd probably double this Karlsson guy's points, but he's a huge two-way player, and again, that goes to the system. Vegas plays a different system.
Do you guys like how random and variant hockey can be?
Paul, go ahead.
Because this is the fundamental disagreement here is I need a little more predictability.
Right, no, but
it doesn't make sense.
Right, but then
it doesn't make sense.
But then just give up. Give up on it. If you don't like it, give up on it. I mean, it's never going to make sense to you to fit what you need it to.
Just start with the right premise. These aren't scrap heap players. Your initial premise is wrong. The randomness, like I've said for you guys for years, it's pinball on skates. It is random. But
end of conversation. End of conversation. You literally just agreed with me. You agreed with me.
It doesn't fit what you need it to, and the narrative that you desperately need. You need black and white.
You just called it pinball on skates after 10 minutes of telling me I'm wrong when I call it a random activity that bottlenecks.
But you don't
random for everybody though, Phil. You're pointing to the randomness of a sport and then saying because of randomness, therefore Vegas is good. And I'm saying, no, Vegas is good because they got good players and they're working. The randomness evens out, Phil. It's an 81-game schedule. It evens out. It's random for Vegas one night, and it's random for the Kings the next night. It's 6-2 Wild one night, and it's 1-0 the next night. But it evens out over 81 games, and the cream rises to the top. These are not scrap heap players.
Amazing. Every GM in Canada and America should be fired for not knowing about William Karlsson and Eric Haula. Paul, we love you. We got to go.
Bye, Paul.
651-646-8255. Paul, help me understand.
Well, I actually am calling to ask you what you mean by something. And I went back and listened to our hockey fight from a couple of weeks ago.
You reviewed the tape.
Down the tape.
You reviewed the tape.
That's why I love Paul.
I did review the tape because I had to play it for my family. They laughed. And they told me I was too worked up yelling at you. And so I have.
Oh, it's good. No, disagree. Good radio.
Do they know that we had lunch like a week before?
Yes, they do. Anyway, I want to understand what you mean by hockey is random. Now, when we were talking that day, I said, it's pinball on skates. I've said it to you before. But when I say that, I don't mean that as a whole of hockey. I meant that as, you shoot the puck in and sometimes it hits somebody's leg and goes in, or hits a stanchion and bounces here and bounces there. But generally as a whole, I don't look at the system or the whole sport of hockey as a random sport. So what do you mean when you keep saying it's random?
I mean, the guys in the studio are going to make fun of me for this, but it's not. First of all, it's not 100% random. Clearly, if you have players like Sidney Crosby and you have a roster around a great center, you're likely to win more games in the postseason and more games in the regular season. I'm saying there's a lot more variance and there's a lot more room for random things to cause results in short, small sample sizes. If you crowned regular season champions like you do in the EPL, you'd have a much more true result. But I'm not even advocating for that. What I'm saying is people trying to determine the fate of coaches and GMs based on like a Game 7 Bruce Boudreau, as if it's anything more than a coin flip between two teams in a small sample, that bothers me. And so with the Vegas Golden Knights, it's such an extreme example of every team in the league had a chance to protect 9 players. So you're by definition, you're plucking the 10th best player off every roster and putting together a collection that made it to the Western Conference Finals, which illustrates to me, A, the NHL has a lot of quirky things happen, and the NHL has a lot of players that maybe it's harder to identify who can do what when given ice time, who can do what when given 82 games. But B, hold on, one thing and then go ahead. And the second thing that, like, you and Judd know more about the general manager state in the NHL than I do, how anyone can look at a player. You have a chance to protect 9 players on your roster, and you're a non-playoff crappy franchise. Although the Panthers have been to like they've been to the playoffs twice in the last like 15 years. And how you can misidentify 2 of the best players on Vegas's roster now because you thought they weren't good enough to play. Like, how is that possible? How is it? Nobody in their right mind would say, you know what? All right, it looks like the Twins, we're going to have to protect some players here. Let's leave Eddie Rosario unprotected because, I don't know, he looks like that last year might have just been a pop-up. No, look at the guy's hands. Look at the guy in the outfield. Look at his arm.
You know what's funny? Well, part of the thing you said last time was if you just allowed Eduardo Escobar to play more, he's going to do better. And look what he's doing because he's playing more, just like Hala. But what you're questioning and what your conundrum is, you kind of said these are the 10th best players on each team. That's not the case. For example, the Wild have so many no trade contracts. Mm-hmm. They had to protect players that they wouldn't normally have protected. And so therefore, Hala's not the 10th best player on the team. And that goes to what Judd is saying. You got stupid GMs in this league who give way too many no trade contracts. So then when the expansion draft comes along, no, this isn't the 10th best player.
But were there any even like you guys, be totally honest, both you guys, when the Wild left Eric Hala unprotected, and that's a guy who had played parts of 4 seasons with the Wild. Did either of you say, "Wow, that's a huge mistake.
No,
this guy's going to be a stud in Vegas"?
That's my point. That's the conversation to me is this because I don't remember. That? I don't recall overreacting, Paul, when they lost Hala or traded Tuck. The question now though comes back is clearly with Tuck's play, should Chuck Fletcher, in his evaluation as a guy who drafted and developed Tuck for the first part of his pro career, should he have had the foresight to say, Charlie Coyle's really a decent player, but I think he's probably capped out, but Alex Tuck could become all the things that Charlie has not yet. And I'm not even criticizing because I didn't at the time. I'm saying going back now and having this discussion, should the Wild's management team have had the foresight to say, oh my gosh, Alex Tuck might be a really good player?
And the answer is yes, obviously. Like, you want your GM to be able to identify that. But then my question on top of that is, if GMs and smart fans really have no idea about guys like Alex Tuck and Eric Hala and Marchand and William Karlsson, what does that say? It just says that hockey is so much less predictable than the hardcores believe it is.
Yeah, but again, again, we have to look at the contract situations pertaining to the expansion. I don't know Columbus's situation with Carlson. I don't know any of these other guys' situation. Hockey's contracts are so stupid.
And that's a GM problem again, Paul.
And that's a GM problem. But going back to your Tuck question, and first of all, I did not like when they left Haula unprotected, but I also understood because of these contracts that it was either leave him unprotected or leave Zucker unprotected.
For sure.
You were going to lose somebody good.
Yes, true.
The Tuck question to me is more of why didn't he flourish? When we watched him with the Wild, Judd, I saw nothing when he was up with the Wild at all to indicate he was going to be this player.
Well,
so I certainly can see why they just said, yeah, go ahead and take him. To me, the question, and I guess it's the same question in a lot of sports pertaining to like the David Ortiz situation, why didn't Tuck flourish here, but he goes to Vegas and he's flourishing? What was our coaching staff not seeing and not doing? Is it our system?
It's opportunity, Paul.
He also only played like a handful
He
of
didn't
games,
play that much, and if you go back, Haula's a classic example of Mike Yeo didn't trust him, right? Mike Yeo, absolutely, he would demote him to the fourth line, and he became, I think he had one good year here and became a nice player, but all of a sudden with the Golden Knights, these two were plopped into a situation where they were told, go get him, go do your thing. And to me, it's confidence and opportunity.
Yeah, and that goes back to the GM. Because they didn't have the opportunity here because of all these players with the contracts. You got to play them. If you're paying Pominville $5 million a year,
yep,
you got to play them. You can't scratch them.
You're
so
not
who do you scratch? You scratch the players like Haula and Tuck. They don't get the opportunities, and now they go. So it goes back to the GMs.
Yeah, Paul.
You're right. Thanks, Paul.
Bye, Paul.
Talk to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's right.
It's just it's fascinating. It's
very interesting.
And
Yes.
you guys have helped answer some questions, but I just think it's so
and
ridiculous.
I will say this.
Like one of the answers is, GMs are morons. Okay.
James Harden failed to make his baskets on the threes. They failed to go in the basket.
I think the equivalent.
They both missed.
I think the equivalent would be if the team, if Vegas shot on the ice a far lower percentage in one game than they ordinarily would, much like Houston did in that game, that would be apples to apples. But to compare 0 for 27 to like a great save is not the argument we're having here.
But if you compare them all individually, if you take the Harden shots and let's say Harden makes 2 or 3 more, that alters that game.
Correct.
And he missed the basket.
That's true.
Tuck missed putting the puck. It's the same exact thing. But it's a shot.
No, but the argument is like how lucky was the save? That's the argument. Not
right. No, but no. But I'm going. But Dave Dave took it down a different path then.
And now Paul's on hold, for God's sake.
Dave took it down a different.
Ridiculous.
And
all right,
Paul's
screw it. Okay, Paul.
That's not why I'm calling.
Oh, you have an autograph story. Okay.
Yes.
Oh, wow. Oh, your timing I thought was impeccable, Paul.
We get ganged up again here. At least Dave's in my corner this time.
You want to put me on hold and go to break, and I'll talk to you when you're done arguing?
Yes, we'll put you on hold. Thanks, Paul.
You don't produce the show. We talk to you when we want to talk to you.
I love Paul. I was sure he was calling in to debate this. He's got an autograph story, and he just told us, I'll hold while you break. I love this show.
What's question 2?
And the equivalency, Judd.
To show how smart you were, you actually revealed yourself to be a moron.
And like what person doesn't take notes?
It's true. Can we?
I think you know what person. I think you know a few.
Okay, now
I think this is getting very personal.
You've hit a nerve.
All right, Paul, we got about 2.5 minutes for your autograph story. Go ahead.
It's kind of like Judd working with people that think they know what they're talking about hockey.
Oh, yes.
There it is.
My God.
There it is.
All right, go ahead, Paul.
Okay. I've got 2 stories that are connected, and it's the same guy, Kent Herbeck. He was my favorite player growing up, and my first cousin, was one of his best friends at Bloomington. I don't know if it was Jefferson or Kennedy, wherever he went. Kennedy. And he told him about me. I was like 14, 12, whatever it was. And Ken Herbeck took a $1 bill out of his wallet and signed it and gave it to my cousin and said, give this to him. I still have the $1 bill.
Wow, that's cool.
That's cool.
That is kind of neat, isn't it? So then, like a year or 2 later, I'm at the Metrodome, and I'm not one to go seeking autographs, but for some reason this night we decided we were going to stay after where the players walk out. Night of Baseball, and people like Mark Salas signed it, and Dave Engel, and a bunch of no-namers. And Herbeck walks out, and because that's what I was waiting for, and he had a bad game. He had struck out 2 or 3 times, hit into a double play, and he walks by all of us, goes, "Not tonight, folks, not tonight, not tonight." And so I said, okay. So he walks by, and I yell out my cousin's name, and I said, "Hey, Mark so-and-so says hi." Well, he stops in his tracks as he's walking to his car. He turns around and goes, "Who said that?" I said, "I did." He goes, "How do you know Mark?" And I told him, and all of a sudden, now he's signing all these autographs. And this one girl standing next to me looked at me and smiled and starts talking to me, and all because I knew Ken Herbeck. Isn't that neat?
Look at you. That's awesome.
That's very good, Paul.
That's
I'm
right.
proud of you.
All the dating tactics with Paul.
By the way, Phil, do you think that accountant stops that puck last night?
Maybe not that one, Paul. Maybe not that one.
Okay, there you go.
All right, see ya.
Bye, Paul.